Welcome to another episode of Talkin' Tech with IT Edge. I'm Braedon, and in this episode, we talk with Patrick Hayakawa, the Vice President of Marketing and Innovation for the Chester County Economic Development Council and their I2N initiative. So, first, love if you could introduce yourself. What do you do?
Sure.
Who are you?
What do I do? I have been wondering all morning. My name is Patrick Hayakawa. I'm the Vice President of Innovation and Marketing at the Chester County Economic Development Council. We call it CCEDC for short because it is a mouthful. And at CCEDC, we are an independent nonprofit all about supporting local business growth and success. So we will help workers get training so they can get better skills and get better jobs. We will help business owners get loans so they can expand and hire locally. We will help first-time entrepreneurs and founders connect with one another and build community and get skills they need to grow their businesses. So we have a staff of about 40 people and experts in all sorts of different fields and services, from manufacturing to healthcare to IT. And I spend a lot of my time with startup companies and new small businesses that are working to get off the ground.
Cool. So what's your background to end up where you are?
How am I qualified? No. What's my background? So, I've been with CCEDC for 5 years. I've lived in Chester County for 10 years. I'm not from this area originally. And most of my career has been about meeting businesses and seeing how we can help them. So I worked for a Chamber of Commerce for a number of years. Then I worked for a trade association representing biotech and pharmaceutical companies. That's how I got involved with startups and learning about technology innovation and building companies and economic development around advanced technology.
Yeah.
And at CCEDC, we have a couple programs related to that I've been working on for 5 years, and we've grown them a bit, and IT Edge has been one of those partners to help us as we meet these companies say, no company can do everything alone, right? Not only do they need good customers, good contacts, good employees, they need good advisors, they need mentors, they need service providers. Our philosophy is everybody's good at something, but also everybody needs help with something. So a lot of our work is making those connections so that people can grow efficiently and hit their goals sooner with help from good people.
Yeah, I know specifically because CCDC is a big organization, and I know you specifically work with I2N.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about the I2N initiative and your work there?
Yeah, I2N. So I2N is short for the Ideas Times Innovation Network. You'll find we have a lot of brands at CCEDC. CCEDC is like the mothership, but then my boss Gary Smith, he'll show you all the logos and he'll be like, we're like the General Mills of economic development. So there's I2N, there's ITech, there's all these things.
Lots of letters.
Yeah, lots of acronyms. That's right. Never met an acronym we didn't like. So the Ideas Times Innovation Network, that is an initiative within CCEDC whose mission is simply to make our region the best possible place for early stage and technology-driven companies to start, to grow, and to thrive. So we ask ourselves, is Chester County and these western suburbs, is this a place where an entrepreneur can raise money? Can they find their first customers? Can they find real estate, a place to operate their business? And we will make programs, connections, services, grant funding, all these things to increase their likelihood of success. A lot of these are venture-backed or venture-backable companies, so they have an innovative product. Maybe it's a medical technology, maybe it's a software app, and they've got a lot of work to do before they can get that first dollar, right? So they've got development costs or they've got startup costs. So often those companies can't just walk into a bank and say, can I have a loan, right? Because they don't have a proven business model perhaps, or they don't have a product on the market, right? So that comes with all sorts of different business challenges. So we created I2N to really cater to those unique business challenges and bring those local entrepreneurs together. Our specialty, I would say, is first-time founders. Often if you have, run or sold and exited multiple companies, you might not need us, but we believe that entrepreneurship should be an avenue available to everybody who wants it. So we're really proud of our efforts to bring together first-time founders And often they're really smart people, qualified people from other career paths, and they say, you know what, I've got an idea and I really believe it. I believe my product can change the world. And we say, okay, let's work on it. Let's do it.
I mean, it sounds like a high risk area to be in. If it's like first time
It is.
founders, first time business owners, how do you go about? And I know, you said some of it is loans, correct?
Yep.
High risk
Loans.
So how do you go around navigating that amount of risk and
Yeah.
still supporting them properly?
It is high risk, and you're right. To your point, a lot of economic development agencies don't do anything in this field because it is high risk, and they say, okay, we'll spend our time trying to attract established businesses, right? For example, at CCEDC, that has not really been our approach. We're fortunate in Chester County to have a fairly healthy, fairly diverse economy. We've got healthcare, we've got technology, we've got agriculture, we've got manufacturing. So that diversity in itself is a strength. We don't have all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So we're unique in that we do invest time and resources in these relatively, you're right, high risk. Most startups fail. These high risk endeavors, we do it because, I'll give you two reasons. One, there's the economic development reason, and then there's the other reason is it feels like the right thing to do, right? If someone's coming to us and saying, I've got a passion, I've got an idea, do we want to cross our arms and say, well, we don't have a program for that, or we can't help you. We only do Main Street businesses and big businesses. That's just never has felt right to us. The other reason, from a more economic development practical standpoint, is high risk, high reward, right? So you look around at some of those technology companies that have put Chester County on the map from an economic sense. Think about Vanguard, right? Think about QVC. Think about folks might know Shared Medical, Siemens, Cerner, now Oracle, right? Why are they in Chester County with thousands of employees? Well, it's because 20, 30 years ago or more, someone who lived here said, I have an idea to how to build a better company, right? So and actually we're really proud to have been involved in pretty much all of those startup stories that I just shared. Those are homegrown Chester County startups. So high risk, high reward. So if I2N is working with maybe 100 startups in every given year, you're right. More than half of those will not exist in 3 to 4 years. It's just the reality of the business. But of the other half, some will exist, some will be going well, maybe small to mid-sized businesses, some will be going like gangbusters, and a couple of them will really change the face of the county, right? Or of the world, perhaps, with their product and their innovation, which is really the goal for those founders.
What are the main differences that you see in companies that succeed?
Boy, if I
know it's a big question.
They're like, do you think my idea is going to work? And it's like, if I could predict that, I would not need to work for a living, right? So
exactly.
How'd you phrase the question? What's the
you
difference
said,
in the ones that make it?
Could be over 50% in the first couple of years that might not be here. So what do you see as the difference in the ones that still are?
My advice to anyone, if they had to focus on one thing, or what do the people who make it do really well, if someone is watching or listening, thinking about a startup or thinking about how to grow their business, the ones who make it, sometimes it's like, well, they're the smartest, or they have the coolest product, or they have the best team, or they raise the most money. All those like metrics that you can measure. There's one thing that's sort of hard to measure, but I think it's the best predictor, and that is how do I put this? How interested to the point of obsessed are you in your customer and your customer's problem, right? Are you talking to your customers? Do you really know what they're thinking? Do you really know what their pain points are? Do you know why they're buying your product or service? What would lead them to buy it again? The people who really understand and can get inside the mind of their customer, that is the superpower. Yeah.
Cool. I've actually not looked into this. Does every county have an economic development council, or is that specific to Chester?
We are a
County?
rare bird because as I mentioned, we're an independent, not-for-profit. So we are our name sounds like we're part of county government. Of course, we are.
Right.
We work really closely with county government. That's essential to doing our job well. However, we are not part of county government. Most counties and municipalities do have an economic development agency. We're actually, might surprise people to know, we're the third largest economic development group in the state. There's Philadelphia, and there's Pittsburgh, and then there's then there's us. So
That's a big achievement.
yeah,
mean,
I think so.
You say it so casually.
And it's not
like,
just
huge.
it's not just about body count or number of employees. It's about impact. And I think our CEO Gary Smith gets a lot of credit because he's entrepreneurial himself. We don't sit back with whatever loan programs or public finance programs we have. If we hear of a problem, a business problem or an economic problem in the region, we lean into that and we say, okay, what's going on here? How can we serve it? That's why I was joking about those 20 brands. Why do we have each one of those? I could tell you a story of, well, that was created because technology employers were having a hard time finding talent in the 80s. And so we built a workforce development pipeline to increase the overall number of qualified applicants. So each one has an origin story and then an ability to make impact, which is the only way you can sustain and exist 20, 30 years later. Right?
And you worked previously with other like chambers.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So
that's right.
What is the main difference between, so if I'm a startup, an early stage business, then I might consider going to a local chamber or a bigger chamber, a state chamber. I can go to a chamber or I can go to the Chester County Economic Development Council or the I2N initiative. I would assume that it's probably best to do both, but I'm curious, that might not be right, or what the difference is between those two.
A couple differences. Speaking in generalities, every chamber and every organization is a little different. Take your average chamber of commerce is primarily concerned with two things, maybe often more, but generally in my experience falls into forming connections, so networking events and group networking opportunities, and then two, public policy advocacy is often a very strong priority for most chambers of commerce. We don't do hardly any public policy advocacy. I think we make a lot of connections. We don't have like monthly networking events, which would be like a chamber style. Yeah. We do a lot of hand-to-hand introductions, which speaks to our model, which is more kind of working hand in hand with an individual company on an individual product of, okay, what's IT Edge's priorities today? Let's make a list of those three things. Let's make a game plan to execute. Oh, you want to hire, you want to get more customers. Okay, here's the ideas. So we're very sort of targeted in how we interact with companies. The other difference from a lot of other business organizations is our model. We're not a membership group. So if you wanted to work with CCEDC or our economic development group, we serve everybody and most of our services are free. Okay, so we would not require a membership or a membership application or something of that nature to benefit from our services. Now that said, if people want to, if they love our work and they believe in what we do, they can invest in us and make a donation. That is a core part of our financial model, but it's not like, step one is fill out the membership application.
Right. So what's next? I2N?
Yeah,
CCEDC?
so I2N's having a great year. We just instituted, for folks watching or listening, we just instituted a new quarterly networking program, because I said that historically hasn't been our strength. It's been more targeted interactions with those companies, but we realized we're serving dozens and dozens of interesting companies a year. We've got a network of advisors and subject matter experts. We're missing an opportunity if we don't put them all under the same roof once in a while to make their own connections and do business together. So folks can keep an eye out for I2N Presents Meet the Network. That's going to be our quarterly networking, very, very casual, low-key, come on by, have a glass of wine, have a beer.
So anyone can go to those?
Anyone can go to those, yeah. I think we might, depending, if you know someone, if you know IT Edge, Braedon will get you in for free, but I think it might be $35 or something like that, yeah. So,
And it makes sense. The first one was, a couple weeks back? The first
one we had just on March 15th.
Yeah, and that was great. That was a wonderful event. That was, like you said, the CCEDC has such a great network, an I2N initiative of supportive, active people in the community. So I think for any emerging business, whether you have a startup and you're in funding rounds or you have an idea, just to ask questions, it's such a great environment to be in. So I thought that first one was was great. Is there anything that, as far as those, in that first one, it was you give a little presentation. Maybe we have a featured speaker for a few minutes, but it was very casual, and that was the intention. Was so we can. It's just about getting to know like the board and different companies.
Exactly. I think there's value in just knowing, especially all of us, we're coming out of the pandemic and things have opened up. We're not confined, maybe the same way we were a year or two ago, but some of it's like getting the attitude, like getting back in the game, be like, oh, this is why we get out there. And or I didn't even realize I've been so focused on my own business. And I know a lot of business owners who it's very easy to be heads down and working on today's problems. And you look up like, oh, there's someone over there that just dealt with the same problem 6 months ago, and I can talk to her for 10 minutes, and we see that all the time. So people sort of rediscovering the value of like knowing your neighbors, right? It's sort of an old school, concept, but there's huge value in knowing your neighbors and what they do, and we think that you don't need a whole lot of content sometimes, to your point of panels and seminars to let people make those connections. That said, one of the programs that we're really proud of for folks who are listening or might be interested in is the I2N Entrepreneurs Roundtable, which you've helped us with not too long ago. That is for those founders groups I mentioned, particularly first-time founders. We bring them together every month. Some of them call it their group therapy, where they talk about what's going well with their company, what's not going well. Hey, have you seen this problem? Or, hey, we're pitching to an investor and we've not been getting good results. How do you deal with that problem? So the exchange of information is incredible. The collaborative spirit is incredible. And we have found in economic development, I think, when it comes to entrepreneurs, that establishing and cultivating that community, that vibe of innovation and entrepreneurship is more important than any single incentive, any single grant, any single program is. Hey, I'm new in town. I like to talk about starting a company. Where do I go? Is it the coffee shop down the street? Is it CCEDC? If a community doesn't have an answer to that, they've got to have an answer, or they're not going to be competitive from a small business and job creation point of view, my opinion.
And you mentioned you can kind of talk with other business owners about issues or problems that you're going through, problems that you're facing, roadblocks. I feel like, and I've definitely felt this for myself, sometimes it's hard to admit or see where you yourself are failing.
That's right.
So how do you kind of bridge that gap between, no, it's fine, like put my head down, just work harder, versus like, do you need someone else to step in and tell you, or is there some process as a business owner you can go through?
Sometimes I call this the being your own dentist problem, where like you just can't see it. You're from perspective. It's a challenge with perspective, where maybe it's a problem, we see it all the time, a problem that someone's been really struggling with or really challenged by, and their response is to put their head down and grind, because that's what entrepreneurs do. And it's like, okay, what if I just, called Braedon, not because I think he has an answer, but just because I got to spout and vent, and Braedon can give me, maybe Braedon had a similar experience, or can just ask me a question that opens the logjam. I think that's hugely important. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's definitely something that I think everyone goes through at some point. But because you mentioned the group therapy part, and I was like, it seems like a therapy kind of thing, or like take a step back and just reflect on everything you've been doing. And to do that in business is just
anyone who's ever started a business. I've started businesses, and I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. The common denominator, they say, it is a lonely enterprise, because the pressure is on me, and maybe I have a staff of 100. Sometimes even the bigger it gets, it doesn't make it less lonely, because you make decisions that support people's livelihoods and pay their mortgages and feed their kids. And if you are struggling and you're like, I can't tell my team that we are in danger of losing a major contract, or I can't tell them that we have this strategic decision to make that might jeopardize the company. So I was only half kidding when I said group therapy. They need a place, a trusted place that they can be vulnerable and be honest with themselves and with each other, and they've found value in that.
Yeah. And with that, obviously the pandemic threw a wrench to everything.
Yeah.
But just looking back at 5-10 years ago in Chester County specifically, what does the business environment look like now that has changed in the last 5 or 10 years? And of course, obviously, the pandemic's changed things around and it might have had an influence. But even if we are looking back at 2013 or 2015, 16 to now, what would a business owner maybe do now that they weren't thinking about in 2013?
Yeah, well, ironically, one of the things that's changed with all the upheaval of the pandemic and all the challenges, both in healthcare, the social challenges, economic challenges, entrepreneurship is actually higher than it's ever been. And it started just before the pandemic. I think it was nationally 3.5 million new business created in 2019. Then it jumped to 4.2 in 2020, and then like jumped above 5 in 21. And it's just been so. Obviously, the changes in technology, changes the ease of the internet, people starting side hustles, people doing e-commerce from their home, people doing consulting from their living room couch has just dramatically expanded the number of opportunities that people can do when it comes to starting a business. So entrepreneurship is on the rise. We're really excited about that. It's also on the rise among groups that are not historically well represented in business. So people of color, women-owned businesses, young people either without a college degree or before college starting businesses. So all of that I see is really encouraging. People like me worry, okay, the businesses are starting, are they going to stick around, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the point of a lot of our work and a lot of our programs, which is to say, okay, you're a year in, what's going well, what's not going well? Again, how do we shorten the distance to some of those goals and make sure that you don't become one of those statistics of small businesses that fail in under 5 years? To that end, we've created a program during the pandemic that we piloted in 2022. We're expanding it in 2023 with funding from the county and from a federal ARPA grant. We call that New Business Champions, and that's targeted to exactly what I was speaking about. So for folks who started a business during or after the pandemic, we do a one-on-one business assessment. We qualify them. We say, okay, it sounds like things are going well, but if we're hearing you right, because of your growth, you need a new website, or you don't want to be doing business on Facebook Marketplace. A lot of these, again, are side hustles that, there's something there. I can quit my job, and we're trying to help them do that planfully and in a stable way that ensures the growth and success of the company. So this grant allows us to give really micro grants to small businesses, 10 employees or fewer, priority for women, minority-owned businesses, folks who didn't go to college, people who, as I said, aren't historically well represented in business ownership. Inject some capital that unlocks their full potential. Maybe it's getting them some training on managing their finances or setting up QuickBooks and documenting their expenses and their revenues. So it's things like that, hey, how do we spend a little bit of money here, but it unlocks a skill set, brings a new perspective, and sets them on a path to success.
Yeah, so you said the QuickBook, like getting accounting in order. What are some of the most popular channels that these emerging businesses
we
tend
survey
to
all
go
of them.
towards?
Surprisingly, when I set this up, I thought it was going to be like really tangible, like transactional stuff. Like, I need a lawyer. I need an accountant to, fix this problem.
Yeah.
People want mentorship. People want, to our point earlier, people want someone who's been there, done that, because they don't have the confidence. And they say, how do I talk to someone who can give me the peace of mind or call out when I'm about to make, a really costly mistake? So people want smart people to talk to. Financial literacy, financial preparedness, financial coaching of, hey, I've got customers, but it's all on my phone, on Venmo or Cash App, and wait, what's my tax bill going to be, or how do I put this into a computer so that if I want to look back and were you profitable this month? I'm not sure. We see a lot of that, which is not a knock. It just means those are the natural progressions of business, and we're tending to get people when, okay, you have money coming in, that's a good thing, but how do you forecast? What if you want to hire? I would say a lot of people working with have that goal of going from being a sole proprietor to getting that first hire, that second hire, which really is the path to security and wealth building, and where you start to see the benefits of real owning an entity rather than being a freelancer or a contractor. Again, nothing wrong with that, but if people are setting long-term business goals, they need to understand the difference, and how to plan and take the steps to get there.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed, and our team at IT, I just really enjoyed being able to participate in that program on the technology side.
Yes.
So things like the websites, or like you said, people just want someone to talk to.
Yeah.
If there's something like certain website issues, or I'm trying to register my domain or hosting, so there are a million things that go wrong with technology.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's been nice to be able to be that consultant, and walk alongside the business owners as they're navigating that technology space as well. So I think that's something that you don't really think about. You think like it's not that hard to build a website, and it's not that hard to build a Facebook page.
Yeah.
But then once you do that and you have it up, it's like, is it good? Like, is it driving
I'm done at that point,
traffic?
right? Yeah.
You're like, there's a whole journey that goes after that that I've seen in my experience that people simply don't know.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I have the stuff. Why isn't it working?
Yeah.
So moving to that next step.
To your point, you can spend a lot of time trial and error, tinkering, and people do that with success all the time. Being with the rise of YouTube and other tools, you can teach yourself, but is it going to cost you 6 months of runway? There's all the or you're never going to fix it. So when we saw those stats about those new small businesses being created, the reason we applied for that grant, we said, okay, if there's been a 30-40% increase year over year in small businesses, we know there hasn't been a 30-40% increase in small business support capacity. So we've got to find a way to solve that. And we can't solve that necessarily by increasing our staff and our in-house expertise by 30 or 40% overnight. So we get the applicants, and then we scratch our head and say, okay, how are we going to actually help these people efficiently and effectively? So getting connected with you and talking through the program and IT Edge was hugely serendipitous for us, because we're like, oh, these guys can train people and coach them on how to set up your first business website, and they can also, once it's set up, give you incremental steps to optimizing your search results and managing your web traffic. And importantly, what I love about working with you guys, I'm not just saying this because we're on a video, but we work really hard through all of the advisors we rely on, meet the entrepreneur where they are. Yeah. And often when people are pitching services, whether they may be legal services or painting a house or whatever, they say, okay, here's our package, right? And it's this amount for this many rooms of the house or this many pages of the website. And there's a place for that, but the first time founders we're dealing with, they need to start with a little bit more consultative approach of, okay, what do you understand? What do you not understand? What's your goal? Yeah. Okay, if that's your goal, I wouldn't recommend building a 10-page site. I'd recommend the following, and IT Edge's ability to listen first, and to the point about kind of leaning into the customer's needs. That is what I think has made the partnership a success and made us look good. So thank you.
It's a pleasure for us to be able to work with the companies. Yeah. It's what we're passionate about. And the digital marketing division at IT Edge didn't exist 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I still have, whenever I started it, coming up on 3 years now, which is super exciting. Okay. We still have, IT Edge has been around for 30 some years. But this division in particular still has that entrepreneurial mindset in everything that we do. I and our team are so passionate about that space that it's so fun to be able to go to lift other people up.
If you don't enjoy the ride a little bit and kind of put yourself in the position and likes that problem solving, then often working with small business is not for everyone. That's true.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like we were saying with the loan. Loans are riskier. Yeah. If you're a business, you're a business that does web design, most don't want to work with startups. Yeah. And very early stage companies because, well, they might not be here in 2 years, or they don't have the budget
That's right.
of, a company has 5 locations in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So being able to also step in and, like you were saying, take that consulting approach
Yeah.
of, okay, we know where you are, we were there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm familiar with it,
Yeah.
and if we need to take this year and take our foot off the gas a little bit, or maybe your budget isn't best allocated to digital marketing right now.
Yeah.
And I can see that sometimes. Like, and I think that honesty is really big. Like, I love that you want your new site, but I did a quick research, and I'm seeing, like, you don't have this, and that. Maybe we should, like, get a logo first,
Yeah.
So taking a step back and seeing that, and to that partnership point, we've loved and really value the partnership with the CCEDC and the I2N initiative in particular. In our network partnership, which is new of this year.
Yeah.
I'm curious for other companies, organizations, businesses that might also be passionate about this space and want to get involved. What's a good way for them to partner with you?
Yeah, absolutely. We are an open door at CCEDC. We want to talk to anybody who's either interested in our work and helping out, or need services themselves, or maybe they're not sure if they need services, but again, they're new in town and I didn't know you guys exist. So, call us, let's talk. The Network Partner Program that you reference is really an organic outcropping of some of these successful relationships we've had for our startups we're serving and the advisors who are helping them. And we said, boy, there's companies out there that really know their stuff. They really like working with startups. And turns out they believe in our mission, and we are privately funded at CCEDC predominantly. So they said, you know what, we will invest in I2N because we believe in what you do, and we want to be a part of that work. So what that allows us to do is, when these companies have demonstrated really skill and interest in working with startups in the way we've been talking about, then they can really be our go-to experts on the things that we don't understand completely or know that our clients need help with. So when you came in, a month or two ago, and on the roundtable, the Zoom roundtable discussion, and just gave us a 15-minute hyper informative demo of, okay, I think our working title was, I built my landing page, now what, right? And so walking us through SEO, here's how you can do it yourself, here's how you can work with a company, here's what the questions you should be asking, here's what you might expect to pay, and how to measure your results. That was great because those 15 or 20 startup founders, they, otherwise have to go to Google, spend a day figuring it out. They might not know that people like you exist. And but they put a face to the name. It's a local company. I'm not ready for my website this month. I'm putting out a different fire, but next month, now I can solve that, achieve that goal that much faster. So that's the idea behind the Network Partner Program. And it's really being, local companies helping local companies, which is what we're about.
Cool.
Yeah.
Last question.
Okay.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
If you're an
the Phillies will make the World Series. Yes, that is my answer.
Well, I don't want to ask you a softball pitch. That one's too.
You heard it here on April 5th, right? Yeah. So yeah.
If there's a startup that comes to you and they want one piece of advice, what would you give them to succeed?
Yeah.
I know you kind of touched on it a little bit.
I did touch on that a bit. I'll say it again because I think it's so important. Yeah. Run towards your customers. Okay, well, I don't have customers yet, Patrick, because our product's not ready. Okay, well, who would you be selling to? Can you get their input now before you spend $50,000 buying a building or developing your product? Learning what would they pay and under what circumstances would they pay and who would the buyer really be? So the more you can be a master of your problem, two things. One is you won't go down a road that is not ultimately fruitful for you. And in that learning, you will establish yourself even perhaps more than you already are as an expert on your problem space. Because guess what? I've talked to, we build websites for small businesses, and I've talked to 1,000 small business owners in the last 2 years about what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Can we get 30 minutes to talk about, how you're approaching that problem too? That is going to generate interest and generate positive relationships. So it's, lean into your customer. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're not asking questions, you're probably not doing a very good job. I always say, I think two of the most important characteristics for an entrepreneur are curiosity and creativity, right? So you've got to be curious about what's going on in the world. What are the problems that people are dealing with? How are they solving it? And then creativity. Here's how I can do it a little differently. Or I see there's an opportunity on price. I see there's an opportunity on customer service. What's your creative element that's going to set you apart? So people who really have those characteristics have a really good foundation to build something meaningful and lasting.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again for your time, Patrick.
Oh, thank you.
Hopefully we'll have you back on in a couple months or a year and check back in on everything. But thanks again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Braedon.